Sociology is like a big puzzle. Trying to figure out why people behave the way they do and how they might act in the future helps us understand beyond the superficial. By studying different people and how society works, we can gather social pieces that help us make better decisions on how to make the world a better place. By studying different people and how society works, we can gather social pieces that help us make better decisions on how to improve the world.
Welcome to a special edition of Sociologically Speaking. My name is Rina Risper and I am your host. And today we are bringing you an exciting episode of Then and Now, Confronting COVID-19 in Ingham County. We are also going to be talking about how it impacted the community. Today we are going to be speaking with Jaynaya Barlow. She's a clinical social worker and a therapist. She also is the owner of Live, Love, and Laugh Family Services, and they provide mental health and life coaching services. Welcome to another edition of Sociologically Speaking with Rina Risper. I am here today with Jaynaya Barlow, and she is a therapist, a mom, and an all-around spiritual guru. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Rina. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Let's jump right into it because today we're going to be talking about the pandemic and how our community was impacted by the pandemic and their mental health and their spiritual health. What do you feel happened during the pandemic that really shifted the mindset of, the entire world?
You know, one thing you said, what happened during the pandemic? One thing I want to say, things are still happening. Many
Correct.
of us, even including myself, are still affected by the things that happened during the pandemic. One of the major things that have affected so many of us has been the isolation. Many of us, use work and other outside activities to kind of get out of our head, to do things, to spend time with people. But one thing that the pandemic did, it isolated many of us. It isolated many of us who were single. Many of us were single parents, so we were home with our children more. And unfortunately, there were some people that may have been in abusive situations that were in the home with their abusers. So there are a lot of things and a lot of people and emotions that were affected during the pandemic.
So, how did your business survive during the pandemic?
You know, I was working a full-time job at the time. I was working in the school, so a lot of the work was virtual. But one thing that I did, I actually started my private practice during the pandemic,
Wow.
and I started virtually. And for myself and for my clients, it was definitely the best thing that I could have done. There were so many clients that were isolated, that were so grateful that they had this opportunity to get therapy and to get it inside their home. And for people of color, therapy can be a little bit challenging for us because a lot of times we don't trust people. We may not understand the process. We may not trust the process. But me being a person of color, it enabled me to build relationship with my clients and to create a safe place for them to talk, to get things off their chest, and for me to really help them.
Do you think that the pandemic allowed BIPOC individuals the opportunity to express themselves more? Do you think that mental health has become something that BIPOC individuals seek more now after the pandemic? And how was it before the pandemic?
I would say, to be perfectly honest, most of my clients are BIPOC. And a lot of my clients had never been in therapy before. I think for a lot of people, things got pretty bad and they didn't know what to do. And a lot of times they say, if you want something different, you have to try something different. So a lot of them were willing to seek out that help to try something different to get the help that they needed. One thing that I think was beneficial during the pandemic is the availability for virtual telehealth sessions. People didn't have to leave their homes to get sessions. A lot of times, transportation is a barrier. Sometimes time is a barrier. Sometimes, if you have children, getting a sitter is a barrier. One thing that was beneficial during the pandemic, and even is beneficial now, is the availability for clients to have teletherapy.
So, how did you feel when telehealth started? I know that must have been a big shift for mental health workers, period.
Mhm.
How did you feel about that? And what is going on now, 3 years after the pandemic first began?
Well, it was definitely a shift because one thing about therapy is really about relationship building. And relationship can be difficult, if you're on a screen. So it made me definitely think outside the box about ways that I can connect with my clients, especially my younger clients. So it really made me pull from a space inside of me to say, okay, what can I do to connect with my clients, even though they're on a screen, letting them know that I'm here, that I'm supporting them, even though I'm not there with them face to face. So it was challenging at first, but people were ready and they were willing to take this chance and to grasp this opportunity to get help inside of their homes.
What are some of the issues that you found that people were struggling with? And 3 years later, are they still struggling with the same issues? Give me the top five issues that you found in the beginning of the pandemic. And then, well, like you said, it's really not over. People are still getting COVID.
Mhm.
And so n- now, what are the top five issues?
In some situations, a lot of the issues are still there. A lot of people are still dealing with anxiety. A lot of people are still dealing with depression. People are dealing with grief and loss. I mean, the grief and loss that they may have experienced during the pandemic, time helps, but time doesn't make that grief and loss go away. So they're still dealing with those things. And even with the anxiety is on a different level. They may have dealt with anxiety before, but being in a situation where they were forced to be at home, they were in their safe place. And now they have to go outside and deal with people again. For a lot of people, this is so challenging. I have some clients that were able to work virtually, that were flourishing. Their work production was up, but some of them have gone back to the office and are having panic attacks in the office. Their productivity is going down because of the distractions. So people are still dealing with a lot of the same issues, but a lot of times in a different way. A lot of times people had issues with post traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Um, they may still have those issues, but they're dealing with them in a different way. So a lot of the issues are the same, but sometimes the being outside of the pandemic, they they're different, or they're different levels to it now.
That's really interesting that you say that. I want to turn to education
Mhm.
and how our children are doing. I think that a lot of students missed out. They missed out on the social interaction.
Mhm.
They missed out on the exercise, walking back and forth to school, laughing, joking, playing. How do you how do you see the next generation, the generation that grew up with masks on? How do you see them flourishing in the future? And also the students that, I don't know, maybe were in fifth grade.
Mhm.
It's You think about it, it's like, well, maybe kindergarten, first grade, second grade. I mean, there's so many students that have possibly been mentally impacted by the pandemic.
This is something that I can definitely even speak on a personal level. I have a son who's 13 now. And during the pandemic, and he's an only child. So it was just, me and him. And there's a lot of anxiety when it comes to being outside and dealing with people. A lot of this generation, especially the generation social media, a lot of our young people and our teens, they do not communicate well with people outside of social media. The anxiety level for young people in this generation I see is a lot higher than others because of the COVID. They've become more comfortable talking over different social media platforms. But a lot of times, meeting people face to face, you can definitely see their levels of anxiety increase. They may not be comfortable going, to different dances and parties and participating in different activities. There are a large population of students. Um, and families in general that have decided not to enroll their children back into traditional education. There are a lot of online programs. There are students that study online now, and there are a lot of parents that have taken their students out of the traditional public school system and that have decided to homeschool. So it has not affected just the children, but the families in general. A lot of families have decided, you know what, I'm not happy with the current education system. It's safer, and my children are getting a better education for me educating them at home. There are some parents that choose to say, you know what, my child flourished in an online education. Why put them back into the public school system? This is working for us.
I totally understand what you were saying. It's very complicated. I am also, after the break, I'm going to talk to you about grief and loss.
Mhm.
There are certain circumstances where children have brought COVID home to their parents.
Mhm.
So we're going to talk about that after the break. But how is the current environment working to heal this shift in our mindset, this internal fear, this internal fear of, if that person has COVID, I don't want to get it. A lot of people are now at the point where sometimes if you've had COVID, they, kind of shy away from you, which, makes you think, well, you don't even know if you had COVID because you might not have even known. And that kind of behavior really does something to our mental health.
Mhm.
Just briefly add to that.
I would really say that when it comes to COVID, I think that education is key. Unfortunately, I believe that the media and the government did not do the best job of educating the community. I do. This is just my personal opinion. I feel like that there were some tactics that were in place that made people more fearful than they needed to be. And some people. As far as vaccinations, personally speaking, I feel like that's a personal choice. But the way that the vaccination were presented to the population, it was frightening to some people. And
Absolutely.
traditionally, people of color are not necessarily trusting in the federal government, especially when we think about things like the Tuskegee experiment. So just the way that things were presented, it created a lot of fear in our community.
Indeed, it did. Viewers, we are here with Jaynaya Barlow. She is the owner and operator of Live, Love, and Laugh Family Services, and we shall be right back. Welcome back from our short break. This is Sociologically Speaking. My name is Rina Risper, and today I have Jaynaya Barlow with us. She owns and operates Live, Love and Laugh Family Services. And before the break, we were talking about education, we were talking about mental health. It's just a lot, isn't it? I mean, the pandemic has really changed the trajectory of almost everything. I would have never have thought that I would go to the store and eggs would be 4.25. Okay. You know what? I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna get me one carton of eggs, and then I'm going to supplement them eggs with some egg whites because I love eggs. But it's been really, really interesting. And what's really interesting too is that you started your business at the beginning of the pandemic. That shift must have been absolutely incredible for you. How did you find clients? I know you are very well known and very well respected in the community as a mental health provider. How did you find clients?
To be perfectly honest, the first client someone referred me, and it's real. I do have a an ad on Psychology Today, but most of my clients have been word of mouth. People will ask me if I'm accepting new clients, or I'll have a client that's seeing me and will ask, "Do I have availability?" They want to refer someone, and most of it has definitely been referrals. I have been extremely blessed when it comes to clients. I'm doing well in that category. I do have availability for a few clients. I do have 3 clinicians that are accepting new clients as well. One thing about the type of therapy that I do, I also implement some holistic modalities, and a lot of the clients that seek me out are looking for a particular type of therapy, and so in that regard, my schedule stays full because I'm really the only person of color that does the type of work that I do in this area.
It's traditional and non-traditional,
Mhm.
and it's a very spiritually oriented practice, which is very helpful for people who are looking for a therapist to deal with a lot of the issues that they have, like their children, being at home with them all day, and like not being able to work and make the amount of money that they used to make.
Mhm.
Also, like dealing with long term COVID symptoms. And I wanted to touch on long term COVID
Mhm.
as well. What are your insights about the mental health aspect of having long COVID, being a COVID long hauler? And do you know of any resources for people in Ingham, Eaton, or Clinton County?
What I will say that this is something that affects a lot of people, and some people talk about it and some people don't. I think that some people may feel that there's some stigma attached to it because a lot of times when people are not informed or they're miseducated, they seem to have opinions and think that things may be a way and they're not. So I don't really feel like that there is really there. I think there needs to be more support for people with long COVID. A lot of times what the medical community will not tell us is that the things that we eat, the things that we put into our body have a grave effect on our health. My sister, for example, who is totally vegan, she her daughter, my niece, caught COVID twice. My sister was around her. My sister she didn't have any COVID symptoms whatsoever, and I definitely know that it's because of the way that she eats, her lifestyle. I definitely feel like that, like I said, what we put into our body. and even different breathing exercises. They call it breath work and mindfulness. These are different techniques that can help people with long COVID and just the population in general. These are some of the techniques and some of the things that I talk to about, with my clients about. A lot of times when it comes to long COVID, it affects our immune system. So I talk to my clients about ways that they can naturally increase their immune system by changing their diet, by doing some meditation, by getting outside. It's finally getting warm enough outside.
Oh,
Grounding, yeah, thankfully.
this is Michigan,
Yes,
next thing you know, in June, we'll be wearing a parka and some
right.
snow boots. You just never know, but gotta love Michigan. I absolutely love Michigan. I absolutely love Lansing. It's just a really beautiful place to get to know people. And I think that life is kind of about what you do with it.
Absolutely.
Not well, you could want to move, but if you have the same mindset and the same attitude, you're going to find the same things wherever you live. I think that we have such amazing opportunities to make things work. We have amazing opportunity to maybe start a long-term COVID group in Ingham, Eaton, and Clinton County. Make it all together.
Hmm.
Make it inclusive so that different people can see that someone in Clinton County has long-term COVID, as well as someone who, lives on the south side of Lansing, and that
Absolutely.
that really will make that connection. But prior to, the break, we were talking about grief and loss,
Hmm.
and I'm not really sure how I would deal with a child who brought COVID home and then someone passed away from catching COVID. Why aren't we talking about these issues, and who is taking care of the people who gave someone else COVID, or maybe didn't give them COVID? Maybe they got COVID from them, but we really don't know. We're in this really fuzzy stage where we're just trying to, in my humble opinion, push 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 the pandemic over to the side and behave as though everything is okay.
Hmm.
And it's totally not okay.
Hmm.
How would you deal with someone who has lost someone to COVID, and that loss was as a result of them bringing COVID home? There's nothing like walking through the door and your child is ill and you take them to get a test and they say you have COVID.
Hmm.
It's just it's just an overwhelming feeling. What would you say to someone who had a loss, or even had a loss of someone who had COVID, who was a great friend in the neighborhood, or, a lot of people passed away from COVID?
Absolutely. One thing about, being a therapist and even being a good friend is creating a safe place. A lot of time people don't feel comfortable talking to family and friends because they don't feel safe in that environment. They don't feel like what I say to you is gonna stay between us. They don't feel like that they can truly share their true emotions without being judged. So
Mm,
creating a place where they feel safe, where they can be supported is the most important thing, because a lot, especially when it comes to our children, as parents, you're a parent. As sometimes as parents, we feel so much guilt for things that we have no control over whatsoever. But it doesn't take the guilt away. But having somebody that we can talk to and say, girl, I messed up. I
right.
I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Right.
You know,
We're still learning. We're
yes.
still learning as adults. So I try to tell my children that all the time. Just be the best person you can be. And when you make a mistake, apologize, tell people that you care about them,
Yes.
and just be nice to them. You don't have to like people in order for you to love them.
Mhm.
And that love is for you. It
Yeah.
is not for them. It is love that you exude from yourself so that you have a barrier to negativity, a barrier to just mental anguish.
Mhm.
And we're just going through a lot right now as a community, as a county,
Mhm.
as a state, nationwide.
Absolutely.
This is an issue. And even people now are still wearing the masks.
Mhm.
Sometimes the grief comes along with having to take the mask off.
Mhm. One thing that I've found is some people like wearing the mask because especially I've noticed a lot of the young people because it's have you seen young people like to wear their hoods? A lot of people, young people, older, it's they wanna be hidden, they wanna be invisible. And one thing that mask enabled people to do is to kinda be invisible in a sense. And some people like that feeling of invisibility, the fact that people that they can kind of blend in and not stand out. So, and I think in essence, I think that's why some people may still wear that mask because they can, in their mind, they can be unseen and people can't see them. They can be invisible in a sense.
You know what? We're going to have to get back to this conversation at some other point in time because wearing the mask is something that I always talk about when
Mhm.
I see people, especially with the whole face. They have the hood on, the mask on, and it's a very interesting space to be in. I want to say that I appreciated talking to you today and give the listeners some information about how they can contact your office.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me here. Again, I'm the owner and operator of Live, Love, Laugh Family Services. I do have a website. The website is commissionedtoheal.com. And I can also be reached via phone at 313-444-3480 or via email at the letter L, the number 3, family services at gmail.com. Rena, thank you so much for having me here
I
today. It was
want
a
to thank you
pleasure.
so much. It's been so exciting. I can't wait to have you back so that we could discuss a plethora of other things. I so appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is Sociologically Speaking, and we were just talking to Jaynaya Barlow. She owns and operates Live, Love, and Laugh Family Services, and we will be bringing another episode very soon. Thank you all for watching. That brings us to the end of our third and final episode of Then and Now, Confronting COVID-19 in Ingham County and beyond. We've explored some fascinating insights and have taken a deep dive into the sociological implications of this unprecedented pandemic. Always remember that knowledge empowers us. Let us continue to navigate these challenging times together. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.
This podcast is sponsored in part by the Tyson Family Foundation, Ingham County Health Department, Capital Area Health Alliance, and the Ingham County Health Equity Council. This series of podcasts will address COVID-19 related inequalities and risk factors among Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities within Ingham County.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe